Good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to the March, oh my goodness. Let's start again. Good evening and welcome to the February 28th regular council evening meeting. This meeting is being recorded live and is streaming. All representations to council, written or verbal, will form part of the public record and be available to the public for viewing electronically or as a written record. Members of the public may access the meeting or participate in the following ways: attend council chambers in person by registering in advance of the meeting by contacting the corporate officer at corporateofficer@summerland.ca to ensure there's enough space in council chambers. You can watch the meeting live or recorded at the District of Summerland YouTube channel, youtube.com/District of Summerland. You can register in advance to speak during the meeting. If you wish to comment during the public comment opportunities under items 8 and 15, you are asked to register in advance by contacting the corporate officer at corporateofficer@summerland.ca with the following information: your name, civic address, and how you will be participating in person, telephone, or by Zoom. Those who have not registered in advance but wish to speak during the public comment opportunities may be given the opportunity, time permitting. After I have provided everyone who has pre-registered with an opportunity to comment, the floor will be open to those in council chambers and those on the conference line. The conference line can be accessed by dialing 778-907-2071 and entering meeting ID 506-489-9374 and passcode 485186. Corporate officer, are there any late items to introduce? None tonight, okay. Could I call for approval of the agenda, please? Councillor Van Elfen and Councillor Holmes, all in favor? Great, that carries. And adoption of the minutes, February the 14th, the public hearing minutes, and February 14th, the regular council meeting in the evening. Councillor Van Elfen and Holmes, and all in favor? Great. Thank you, Councillor Patton. Okay, on to my mayor's report. It's the last day of February, and spring will arrive next month, at least on the calendar it will. On February the 15th, I attended the Summerland Community Arts Council board meeting as council liaison. The Arts Council has a lot of activities in the works, some of which are dependent on COVID-19 restrictions not being increased. However, planning must proceed and the SCAC is optimistic. I'd like to speak about their partnership with the Summerland Rotary Club for the club's last 50-50 draw. Thank you to everyone who purchased tickets. It added about $3,700 to the SCAC's budget. I'd also like to pass along the board's thanks to council for supporting their application for a $7,500 grant and aid. February the 23rd, I attended the third and final meeting of the working group on establishing a new terms of reference for the Thompson-Okanagan Regional Advisory Committee, referred to as RAC, for the Economic Trust of the Southern Interior at CBC. The work has already been completed by the Columbia Kootenay RAC, and both terms of reference will be going to their respective RAC members for approval. Just a reminder that CBC is the agency that, with council's support, provided funding for the business recovery advisors, including Kristen Parsons of the Summerland Chamber of Commerce. Friday afternoon, I was part of a panel discussion providing a local government perspective on the province's watershed security strategy and fund. Silga hosted the webinar for its members. Indigenous and non-Indigenous people outside of local government also attended. Related to this, the Minister of Municipal Affairs has been moved to a new ministry, the Ministry of Land, Water and Resource Stewardship. Minister Osborne will also be the minister responsible for fisheries, and part of her new role will be providing provincial leadership on the watershed security strategy and fund. Former Minister of State for Lands and Natural Resource Operations, Nathan Cullen, is now our minister, so the Minister of Municipal Affairs. On Saturday, February 26th, I attended parts of the virtual One World Festival put on by the South Okanagan Immigrant Community Services, SOICS. Although I didn't participate in the sampling of various cuisines, the online portion was very enjoyable. I look forward to the festival being in person in 2023. It's a much different experience. Saturday was also the opening of the Stories of Diversity exhibit at the Summerland Museum. Presented in partnership with SOICS, the exhibit highlights first-person stories of diverse individuals of the South Okanagan. Stories of Diversity runs until July the 30th. Provided time allows, I'll be attending the Fall Fair Society AGM this evening after council, and on Wednesday, I am volunteering again for the United Way's drive-through breakfast fundraiser at the Lakeside Resort in Penticton. If you live in Penticton and work in Summerland or the other way around, please consider supporting this worthy cause. And, last Thursday, CAO Stat and I had a meeting with the CAO and his executive assistant and the mayor of Penticton, Mayor John Vasilaki, to discuss council's representation, our respective council's representation on the primary care network meetings. And as strongly indicated by council here, their council, we are going to stand fast and continue to push for representation by both municipalities on the primary care network. I'll pass this over to our CAO now.
Thank you, Your Worship. Let my glasses unfog a little bit here. There we go. We had a great turnout for our free Family Day public swims and skates and the photo scavenger hunt with more than 150 family members attending. I think everyone is enjoying the opportunity to get out and do something as a family after a long winter, and especially with the decreasing numbers of COVID-19 in the community. Special thanks to the provincial government for their support of these events. As we move into the spring period, I would note that our first yard and garden waste curbside collection was last week. For those who are planning a larger cleanup effort, our first unlimited yard and garden waste curbside collection will be on your usual collection day during the week of May 3rd to 6th. Construction season is also starting up soon, and this week we had our pre-construction meetings for both the Canyon View water main replacement and the Washington Avenue projects. Off-site improvements on Lakeshore Drive will also be underway soon, which will be conducted by the developers of the Oasis project. Residents can expect construction to begin in the next 2 weeks or so in these areas, depending, of course, on the weather warming a bit. Street sweeping will start in the coming weeks as well, followed by line painting and crosswalk painting efforts, pothole patching, and sidewalk grinding. These efforts will continue through April and into May with a target completion of main road and sidewalk maintenance efforts by the long weekend in May. Drivers are asked to take extra caution around our crews as they work on our streets. Our electric utility is replacing some of the light standards in the Peach Orchard parking lot and surrounds through their regular maintenance program. With the work completed on the Lakeshore Pathway lighting as well, these bright LED high-efficiency lights will last a long time to ensure continued use and enjoyment of the area for many years to come. The lights are also specially designed to shine downward to avoid light pollution and to maximize the use of the light. In conjunction with the pathway renewal from last year and the upcoming washroom upgrades this year, our waterfront offerings are seeing some real care and attention we can all be excited about. Thank you very much.
Any questions of either of our reports? All right, I will get on to the first public comment opportunity. Do we have anyone waiting to speak? No? Okay. So on to 9 development reports. The first one is development variance permit for 17515 Sanborn Street, DVP 21-033. And Alex is going to walk us through this one.
Yeah, perfect. Let me just get my screen shared for you guys. All right. So the District of Summerland has received an application for variance at 17515 Sanborn Street. The subject property is a residential lot within Hunters Hill Phase 1 housing development in Summerland. The applicant is constructing a two-story single detached home that will include an overheight retaining wall in the south side yard. The wall is partially constructed at this time, as it was intended to reach a total maximum height of 2 meters at the outset of construction, which is permitted under our zoning bylaw. Due to miscalculations in relating to the elevations on the property, the applicant is now seeking an overheight retaining wall that will reach a total of 3.2 meters in height. In the OCP, the future land use designation of the subject property is rural residential, and it is zoned country residential CR1. These land uses are consistent with all neighboring properties. Due to the sloped nature of the property, a significant change in elevation exists between the upper floor foundation and the walkout basement floor foundation. The retaining wall is being proposed in order to create two level elevations on the property and to enhance the usable area in the rear yard. Although tiered retaining walls are preferred due to their reduced visual impact, the proposed location of the wall makes this concern less significant. The proposed wall is to be sited in the southern interior side yard of the property, adjacent to the foundation of a future neighboring home. As a result, the retaining wall will not be highly visible from adjacent properties or from Sanborn Street. A structural design sealed by a professional engineer will be required to address any geotechnical, structural, and stormwater concerns at the time of building permit. Now, the proposed retaining wall height variance will allow the property owners to finish their home in a uniform manner while expanding the usable area in the rear yard. It should be noted that a safety fence will be erected around the top of the wall. The variance is being recommended for approval by staff due to its limited impact on adjacent landowners and overall neighborhood character. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Alex. Questions of staff? All right. And I see you, Councillor Patton, and I don't see your hand up, so you're good as well. No questions? Okay. Could I ask someone to bring forward the resolution, please? Councillor Van Elfen.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The council authorized issuance of development variance permit DVP 21-033 for a property located at 17515 Sanborn Street, legally described as Lot 17, District Lot 1178, Osoyoos Division, Yale. District Plan EPP 102577, and that the variance for the following sections of zoning bylaw 2000-450 be granted. Maximum retaining wall height, section 5.5.4, to vary maximum height of the retaining wall from 2 meters permitted to 3.2 meters proposed.
Thank you, Councillor Van Elfen. And seconder, Councillor Traynor, thank you. Any discussion on this? All right, I'll call the question. All in favor? And that carries unanimously. Thank you. Second development report is 9.2, Development Services Monthly Activities Report for January 2022. And this is Brad.
Thank you, Worship. So as I am every month, I'm before council just updating on activities from the Development Services Department for the month of January. For the month of January, we did not receive any new planning and development applications so far within the month of January. So our staff have been busy processing active applications through to committee and to council for review. There'll be some new applications coming forward in March for council's consideration. And we've also just recently in February have seen an uptick in the number of planning and development applications submitted. So, and as well, I want to mention as well, the staff have been busy with a number of strategic projects from the planning side from staff's perspective, including short-term rentals, which is the next item for the discussion on the agenda, as well as zoning bylaw administrative update. We're going to be bringing forward those amendments at our next meeting in March, and starting the project plan for the secondary dwelling review, which was initiated in February and will be going to committee for discussion in March and April. For building permits, we had a bit of a higher period in January. Looking at our comparables for the the month of January for the last 5 years is on the higher end at 4.328 million. This indicates that we're maintaining the strong pace of construction activity that I presented at the end of 2021, moving into 2022. And as well, I want to point out too, we had a total of 18 building permits issued in the month, which is also on the higher end, given the ranges from our previous 5 years. For bylaw enforcement, here's a year-to-date comparison from 2022 to 2021 and 2020. In general, for the month of January, the bylaw enforcement team received 39 files in January. Most of these complaints were related to the traffic bylaw and good neighbor bylaw. In comparison, the month of January from the month of January last year, you notice that we have a decrease in the total number of files, but majority of these files from the month of January last year were related to self-generated files, primarily with abandoned vehicles as well as trees blocking roadways and boulevards, being a problem area that we were tackling strategically last January in 2021. And in addition, we had a reduction in snow-related enforcement files in 2021 from 2022. And we also had 2 officers going full-time during this time period in 2021. This past January, our bylaw staff have been very busy with administrative items such as the short-term rental regulation process, as well as starting early discussions with potential monitoring services for enforcement support for short-term rentals. As well, we've done some administrative reviews that will be coming forward to council in the near future, including the building bylaw, which council has already seen, but also the traffic bylaw is our next review project for the bylaw enforcement team. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions.
Questions, council? I have just one for you, Brad, and that is on the list of things in process, applications in process, I guess. Can you tell council where we are, or not, I guess, with the proposed development on Elliott Street in behind the Baptist Church?
Sure. Yeah, that's not provided on the report because that was, once it's adopted by council as a approved development permit, we take it off the report. These are only applications in process, but last I heard from the developer is that they were making plans to submit a building permit, which should be their next stage in their process. But we haven't received that building permit application yet.
Okay, thank you for that update. Any other questions? Okay, could we receive this for information then, please? Councillor Van Elfen. Councillor Holmes, thank you. All in favor? Thank you. And now on to item 10, bylaws for adoption, short-term rentals, regulatory framework, Z21-015.
Excuse me, Madam Mayor.
Yes, thank you.
I would like to request. I would like to be removed as Julie as a conflict of interest, as Julie and I operate a bed and breakfast in Summerland.
Okay, thank you very much.
Let me know when you're done.
Yes, we will let you know.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Councillor Van Elfen.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. At this point in time, I'd like to put a notice of motion forward that second and third reading for the following bylaws be rescinded. Zoning bylaw amendment bylaw number 2021-048. Business license amendment bylaw number 2021-049. Fees and charges amendment bylaw number 2021-50 and bylaw notice enforcement amendment bylaw number 2021-051 and ticket information utilization amendment bylaw number 2021-052, and that further council directs staff to prepare amendments to the short-term rental regulatory framework bylaws to accommodate a more permissive approach to the primary residence requirement to allow absentee homeowners to appoint a management company to manage their short-term rentals.
Okay. So Kendra, these are two separate things. We have to, do we go ahead now and vote on rescinding second and third reading for those bylaws? Yeah, or does Councillor Van Elfen provide a bit of background and then we vote?
So if there is a seconder, then Councillor Van Elfen can go into, as to why he's putting this motion forward and a bit of an introduction. And then the discussion and debate can take place from there.
Okay, is there a seconder for this? Councillor Barkwill?
I'll second the motion, so Councillor Van Elfen, to hear what Councillor Van Elfen has to say about this.
All right, please go ahead, Councillor Van Elfen.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The reason I bring this forward is in part to do with the public hearing and listening to some of the participants at the public hearing. One of the biggest concerns was a lot of the short-term rental accommodations at this point in time are booked solid for the year. So to change this, they would have to cancel all their bookings, which would be, a hardship for them, but also a hardship for our community. After COVID, I think we would like to see as many tourists in our community as possible. I just feel that I'd like to see us more of a, give it a 1 year type, revisit this in a year's time and see how a management company, if that's what, they utilize, and find out through bylaw, like how many complaints are there? So, I mean, there's lots of outfits that have been doing this for years using a management company or themselves because it's a second home they have in Summerland. I hate to see us driving people underground. And I think part of that is, Madam Mayor, there's a lot of long-term, short-term rental people in our community that don't even use Airbnb or VRBO because they have their own clientele. And I'd hate to see it drive underground. So what I'm asking for is basically that we rescind that and we revisit it in a year with input from bylaw and find out what the complaints are like. I mean, the biggest, we had 4 letters in support and we had 15 letters against this bylaw. From the public hearing, I heard from one person that had real issues with an Airbnb next door where the owners live there. So I just think that we, it's kind of the stick and the carrot, and I think we're going a little hard on the stick right now, and give it some time. Let's give this a year and let's revisit it. I had to bring it forward like this as per our corporate officer, Madam Mayor, that I had to include all those items. I don't disagree with all those items. The only item I disagree with is that the management company part. The fees and those things, I'm okay with that. But I'll leave it at that and hear from my fellow councillors, and thank you to my fellow councillors for allowing me to throw this on the table. Thanks.
Council? Councillor Holmes.
I don't know where to start. So I guess people with previous bookings, if that's the concern here, people already have bookings, then I think we can pass the bylaw and then just pass another motion asking staff not to enforce it until September or January or whatever. And then in terms of, we can revisit any bylaw at any time we want. I don't agree with this idea that we're going too hard on the stick. That this is kind of some sort of heavy-handed, overly restrictive model. What I see this is something in the middle. If you look at the valley, if you look, previous staff reports have told us that this brings us in line with Kelowna, with West Kelowna, and with Oliver in terms of not permitting, in terms of having a residency requirement. If you look at other communities in the valley, Peachland, Osoyoos, the regional district of Central Okanagan, they don't allow short-term rentals at all. And that's restrictive. The only one who has this permissive approach is Penticton. They're kind of the odd ones out here. And so if we want to position ourselves so that we can tweak it later, I would think, well, you position yourself in the middle. And then if you're in the middle, then you can get a little more restrictive or a little bit more permissive, whatever it needs to be. But you don't stick yourself at one end. And then what if you have to figure out you have to get to the other end? That is going to be a really hard slog. So you start in the middle, and then you can go a little bit this way or a little bit that way. And this is what we're doing. And I understand, that this is a difficult decision, that there are going to be a lot of people who have whole unit short-term rentals right now who aren't going to be happy. And I've heard from them. We've all heard from them. And it's not easy when you, we're going to, make, no matter what we do, we're going to make some people happy and some people unhappy. And that's what, that's kind of, that's our life. I mean, that's what we do. And it's just because we then decide that what the decision we make, some people aren't going to be happy with that decision, doesn't mean we haven't listened to them and that we don't understand where they're coming from. And I'm really confident we've heard all sides of this discussion, and we've examined all sides and the impacts that they're having. We've looked at this issue as much as we looked at the dog park and the dog owners, and we can keep going on in circles for this forever. But at some point we have to make a decision. And if I thought that more consultation, getting more feedback was going to make a difference, that it, if it would be fruitful at all, then I would support, I would support this motion. But I don't think it's going to tell us anything we don't already know. And it comes to a time where we have to make a decision. We can't just dither this. We have to make a decision. And I think we're at that point. Thank you.
No? Councillor Carlson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Van Alphen, for bringing this forward. I know one of the reasons you've done so is that we've continued to receive information because there's still an opportunity to provide input on the fees and charges bylaw. And in that process, many people maybe didn't recognize that the public hearing has passed and we can't actually receive new information. And so I think there's a bit of a clarification there that maybe folks didn't have before. We've been talking about what the rules will be around short-term rentals for 6 months, about, give or take, in 2021 and into 2022. But prior to that, it's been a priority, and we've known that Summerland, we haven't had any rules, and we needed to put these rules in place. And so the idea that the council didn't go through a process, or that somehow homeowners weren't aware that this conversation was going on, I don't necessarily agree with that. And I think that through the consultation process, things came to light and things changed, and we can't just do what Penticton did, even though that would be the easy solution to a lot of different things, because we wouldn't have to write our own bylaws and create our own rules. We need to have a Summerland solution. And I think that what has been brought forward by staff and what has been brought to this point of adoption by council is where we do need to start. And just because something was one way last year, it doesn't mean it's always going to be the same. And so we're putting this rule in place, and it doesn't mean it's going to stay the same forever. We do need to try it out. I like the idea of allowing people time to adapt. I don't think we need to say we're not going to enforce the bylaw. I think we need to suggest that there's a certain time period where people can become compliant with the bylaw. And so instead of, if we pass this bylaw tonight, then they don't have to be compliant tomorrow, because that would be impossible. But I do think that, maybe it's September 1st, everyone must be compliant and have their fees paid and their inspection and all of the pieces that go with that. And I don't know, maybe later in this, staff can comment on what that timeline might look like. But I think that's an important piece. And I think, as Councillor Holmes said, at some point we've got to make this decision. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Carlson. Councillor Traynor.
I'll just add a couple things. A lot of what I was going to say has already been said by the previous two councillors, but with regards to Councillor Van Alpen's request that he brought forward, thanks for bringing it forward. And I know why you did, but I don't think that having property management would necessarily address the root cause of the problem. And, neighborhoods are for residents. They're not for businesses. And I think with what we have proposed, we have met in the middle, as Councillor Holmes said, and that we've made a concession to allow residents to rent out a suite or a carriage home on their property and still be there. So I think that that's how we've met in the middle, and we've allowed people to still continue to make money without sacrificing our neighborhoods. I think that if we don't bring in a bylaw like this, that over the next 5 to 10 years, houses in our neighborhoods are going to be bought up, and they're going to be used for business purposes. They're going to be used to rent out year round. And I just think that erodes the feeling of community and neighborhoods with, rotating guests every week. You don't know who your neighbors are. And I know in my neighborhood, we have quite a few Airbnbs. And if there was one next to my house, I would be concerned. I have little kids, and if they were playing outside and every single week there was new people there, I lose the feeling of community. Right now, I know all my neighbors. We have relationships. We trust each other. Like, that's what a neighborhood is. And if we start filling our neighborhoods with businesses, then, we have business zones for businesses. So I think that what we've presented, and allowing people to rent out a suite but still remain in their home, I think that that's a good compromise. And I just don't think that having property management companies manage homes in neighborhoods would make a difference. So I appreciate why you brought forward what you did, and I hear from all the people that have sent us letters. I know it's frustrating, but we really have to look at the bigger picture, and we have to think of how our neighborhoods are going to look in 5 to 10, 20 years, and we want to build community here, and we want to attract more people to live here, and we need the homes and the neighborhoods to do that.
Thank you, Councillor Traynor. Councillor Barkwell.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just would like to expand a little bit on, on what Councillor Trainer said. Certainly one aspect of this is the disturbance that a lot of neighborhoods experience from short-term rentals. But the other aspect, and one of the biggest aspects, but it's hard to quantify, you can only sort of qualify it, is the effect it has on the neighborhoods. As Councillor Trainer says, you don't want to live in a neighborhood where half of the houses are businesses rather than your neighbors and your friends. And it changes the character of it entirely. So if you've got that kind of activity, it should be in a place that's zoned for that kind of activity, which is hotels. Or maybe if you were starting off from scratch and you had a whole new area and you decided that you wanted to make that as a place where you have short-term rentals, and everybody knew that from the start before they bought into that brand new location somewhere else, which we don't have, then I can understand it. But otherwise, you're expecting to live in a neighborhood, and it changes the character of the neighborhood. So that's a very important consideration for me.
Thank you. I'm just going to add a couple of comments as well. We've all heard from a number of people that have said that they have their principal residence elsewhere, but they also have a home in Summerland that they have for short-term rentals. And some of these people are complaining that they did not get adequate notification that all of this was going on. I think the irony here is, if you have property in Summerland that you're paying taxes on, you probably should know what's going on in Summerland. And if you have property here, but you live elsewhere, how are we going to send you notification of something when we don't know, first of all, that you have your home in short-term rentals? And secondly, we don't know where you live necessarily. So how can we send you that notification? So for the people that have said we didn't have adequate consultation or adequate notification, it kind of proves our point that if you have a short-term rental and you're not really paying attention to what is going on in Summerland or necessarily at your short-term rental, it kind of proves our point that we need to have some regulations in place and that you need to be more aware for the sake of the community, not just for your sake, but for the sake of the community, in having short-term rentals and making sure that you're following the regulations. So that's one thing that I wanted to say about that. In terms of reviewing something down the road, not having anything, and then reviewing something down the road, I think, well, what I would like to see is the same thing, but putting in place what we have been talking about for 5 months or so now, and then having the review down the road. And I believe that in reviewing minutes from our last discussion, so on the 14th, our Director of Development Services suggested that we review this in 18 months. So that is already a consideration. And we're always reviewing bylaws. And this one is no different. We've already heard from the Director of Development Services today that they're looking at reviewing a zoning bylaw, the building bylaw is underway, and there's all kinds of things that the director and his team are working on in terms of development. So, although I am hearing, just like all the other councillors are hearing, and I appreciate you bringing this up so we could have further discussion on this, Councillor Van Elfen, I will not be supporting the motion to rescind second and third reading. Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to add to their comments? Councillor Van Alphen.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I appreciate everyone's comments. I truly do. And as you indicated, our planner was saying in 18 months, we'll review this. And I commend him for that. But in 18 months, a lot of people may lose, all their different opportunities and stuff. It's not just about the absentee landlord that lives in Vancouver or Calgary. There's other people here in Summerland. I'm aware of a young lady, and I commend her, that scratched and scraped to get money together for a down payment for a home. Her whole concept was to Airbnb it this summer and go move in with her mom and dad again to make more money to help pay off that mortgage. It's not all, lifestyles of the rich and famous that have multiple homes in different communities that this is what they do. There's other people too. I appreciate everybody's comments. I truly do, but I don't know what reviewing it in 18 months is going to do for us once we've done what we're doing tonight. If we pass this bylaw, is it too late? Do we come back in 18 months and go, okay, no, now we're going to allow management companies because we haven't had any complaints about it? I'm a little confused, but I do appreciate everybody for allowing me to bring this to the table tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Van Alphen. Councillor Holmes and then Councillor Carlson.
I think the purpose of a review in 18 months is situations in the community can change. For example, we might not be under the same housing crisis. Hopefully we've got to get out of this housing crisis someday, right? So, it might not be the same. We might not have the same housing shortages. There might not be the same pressures on housing that we have right now. And those are the sort of things that can have then an impact where you can, look at, loosening something, and other regulations or whatnot. But I just have a question maybe for staff, if I may, is if we give people until September 1st to become compliant to the regulations, is that something that's feasible, and what impact that would have?
Through your worship, Councillor Holmes, to answer your question, yes, it is feasible. I think my recommendation would be go forward with the adoption of all of the bylaws tonight, but then maybe council put forward a separate resolution just for council's information and for the public as well. The enforcement of any of our bylaws are totally discretionary of the district. So it's up to us to decide how and when we enforce our bylaws. So if we have a direction from council that we are giving a grace period before we initiate enforcement, it doesn't mean that we're still going to be wanting to encourage people to come in and apply, get their license in place, pay the fee, make sure they follow the rules. But if there was a period of time for that enforcement period, which is a difference period to kick in, then that would be something we could administer.
There's a follow-up, okay, and then I'll go to Councillor Carlson.
So I'd favor that. It would give people time to honor any bookings that they currently have, and B, to organize themselves, their property, what they would want to do with it long term, knowing it. I think that would be a fair thing to do. So I prefer that approach.
Councillor Carlson.
So just to clarify then, there would be a compliance date, and then following a compliance date, there would be an enforcement date. Is that?
My recommendation would be that one date that from direction that we would be initiating enforcement. So I'm not too sure if it's a compliance date or enforcement date. It'd be the same thing from my perspective.
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah. Then it gives people time to do their paperwork and pay their fees, and it gives the district time to make sure that everything's up to speed. Because we can't enforce something until we've given people time to actually put it in place. So.
I'm going to ask you, Brad, for the, for council and for people that may be listening, to talk about the capability of people to have a management company in those certain circumstances, in terms of operating,
Yeah.
as the bylaws states currently.
Yeah, thank you, Worship. Yeah, what the bylaw currently states is, just to clarify as well to council and to the public, is that the only way that we don't allow a primary resident as the operator is if there's two dwelling units on your property. It could be a carriage house and the main house, or a secondary suite in the main house. And one of those units is in a long-term rental, and another one of those units is in a short-term rental. So we're still allowing for the primary residency to occur, but we're not making the onus on the long-term tenant to be the operator. So in that situation is the only situation that we would allow a property management company, if that makes sense.
Okay, is there any further discussion? So I will call the question on rescinding the 5, I think it is, bylaws, 2, 3, 4, 5 bylaws, rescinding second and third reading of the 5 bylaws. All in favor? Councillor Van Elfen, and opposed? The rest of us. So that is defeated then. Again, thank you, Councillor Van Elfen, for allowing us to have another discussion on this. Okay. Well, this is a short meeting. Notice of motion, are there? Oh, yes, I'm sorry. Sorry, that's a very important piece. Okay. So would someone like to bring forward adoption of those 5 bylaws, please? Councillor Holmes.
Do I need to read them?
Yeah, please read them. You don't have to read them. You can read them all kind of all together and then be adopted.
That zoning bylaw number 2021-048, and that be adopted. The business license amendment bylaw 2021-049 be adopted. That fees and charges amendment bylaw 2021-050 be adopted. That bylaw notice enforcement amendment bylaw number 2021-051 be adopted. And that ticket information utilization amendment bylaw number 2021-052 be adopted.
Thank you. Seconder, Councillor Traynor, thank you. And further discussion on the adoption. All in favor? Opposed? Councillor Holmes, Councillor Van Elfen is opposed. Thank you. Do you have something to add to this particular one, or should we get?
I do.
Okay.
I'm just wondering if we might put another motion forward in terms of compliance.
Oh, okay.
Is that the right timing to do that?
Should we get Councillor Patton back or hold off? Not yet. Okay. So would you like to go ahead and do that, please, then?
Yes. So
Councillor
I would like to move that owners and operators of short-term rentals be given until September 1st, 2022 to become compliant with the District of Summerland zoning bylaw, or zoning, or the bylaws. Thank you.
Seconder? Councillor Holmes? Further discussion on this? Councillor Holmes?
I don't know if it's a big deal or something or not, but September 5th is Labor Day. So September 6th might be the better day.
That would be fine. Or September 15th. I don't know if it matters to staff once. So September 6th at the end of Labor Day, when you're back in the office, it makes the most sense. If that's a friendly amendment, I don't know. Is that okay? Yes? Okay.
That's okay as it is, right? Okay. Any other comments? Councillor Barkwell?
Was that motion seconded, or was it just a correction to the, just addressing both? Okay, sorry. I suppose the only reason to support this motion is to give people who have bookings already made for this summer a chance to see those bookings through. But on the other hand, it's only February 28th. There's plenty of time to cancel those bookings and for them to be arranged to find another place in a house that has a suite that is used for short-term rentals. So I don't necessarily see the necessity of doing this. I'd rather, I'd kind of like just rather get on with it. So I don't think I'll support it.
Councillor Van Elfen?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I do agree with Councillor Carlson. It gives people some time to get their affairs in order. These are booked, these people, a lot of people, myself included, other people that I'm well aware of, use Airbnbs and vacation rentals because they're more of an affordable way, especially if you have children, what have you. So these people have already booked it. Their holidays are scheduled. I hate to see, them all have to cancel and try to rebook something. So let's give it that grace period. And hopefully by then, maybe we can come up with some more ideas. But in the meantime, I support Councillor Carlson's motion.
Thank you, Councillor Van Elfen. Anyone else? As you just mentioned, Councillor Van Elfen, speaking from personal experience, I was able to get an Airbnb for my stay in Victoria. My son's getting married in July. I would hate to hear that they have had to cancel that because it took a while to find a place that I could, work with. So I think this is something that I'm going to support as well. I think it's a good compromise. Councillor Holmes.
That actually happened to me once in Toronto. I had a Airbnb booked in Toronto, and then the City of Toronto changed its rules to make them more restrictive, and they had to cancel my booking because they were no longer allowed to run an Airbnb. So there's lots of precedents for canceling these things because the local government has changed their regulations. But if I could have a question to staff, so if we pass this so that we don't enforce it till September, if there's a party house happening and a neighbor complains, we get a complaint, are we able to deal with it? And how would we deal with it?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think anything that's provided within the good neighbor bylaw would still be enforceable because that's not the subject exactly of tonight's amendments. So if there were noise impacts, there were nuisance impacts from the good neighbor bylaw, we could use that bylaw. But the zoning provisions, I think specifically that are proposed or have been adopted tonight wouldn't be the ones that we would be enforcing. So anything within the zoning would be, or the business licensing bylaw wouldn't be enforced until September 1st.
Okay. All in favor? Opposed? Councillor Barkwell is opposed. So that carries. Thank you for catching me on that, Councillor Carlson. To go through all of this again. Now, do we have any notices of motion, Kendra, that I'm unaware of? Okay, thank you. So we're on to correspondence. 3 pieces of correspondence. Does anyone want to bring any of those forward? Councillor Holmes's RDOS report is in there. Councillor Van Elfen.
Riveting report, I must add.
Actually, there is something I wanted to talk about on the RDOS. Go ahead, Councillor Holmes.
It'll be just as riveting next one because septic systems are back on the agenda.
I know what it was. Actually, a couple of things. Really super pleased to see that there will be voting ONA representation on the OBWB. This is something that OBWB has been trying to get for a while. And it's certainly something that mayors brought up in our last conversation with the Minister of Municipal Affairs and the Minister of Indigenous Relations and Reconciliation. This exact matter came up, so I'm really pleased to see that. Secondly, I am also happy to see that there are so many SILGA resolutions coming out of RDOS, some that impact us directly and others that don't necessarily, but that's good to see. Is there anything else out of those 3 pieces? Councillor Van Elfen.
Just a point of interest, Madam Mayor, being that there are neighbors in the RDOS out in Meadow Valley folder area, that the Meadow Valley Aquifer Study is going to be taking place, and there's $80,000 been set aside for that study, and I think that's awesome, being that they are our neighbors, and a lot of agriculture going on out there also, so the aquifer is a very important part, and you know, it affects all of us, even over here in the Eneas Creek Garnet Valley watershed. It affects our neighbors and back and forth. So I'm happy to see this. Thank you.
Yeah, very good point. I wanted to point out that, and we got an email earlier today telling us that this was coming. There are, for the SILGA elections, because some executive are not running again for one reason or another, some of them are not running again for local government, there are only 6 nominations for 7 positions. So if you're interested in that, or if you, oh, did you have something to say, Graham? Okay, or you know of somebody in the SILGA region, because there's a whole lot of us, that might be interested in representing their community, whether it's RDOS or, not RDOS, a regional district or a municipality, please contact them. That would be great. Graham.
Thank you, Your Worship, and just for your awareness, the SILGA AGM and conference nominating committee report is in the online package. It was a late addition. It just might not be on your printed agenda sheet, but it is in the online materials there.
Yes, I see that.
Okay,
Thank you.
great. Thank you.
Okay, so now on to committee and commission minutes. There are 4 APC, Advisory Planning Commission minutes, 1 Agriculture Advisory Committee minutes, and 1 Water Advisory Committee minutes. Is there anything in any of those that needs to be added or corrected or has been overlooked? I'm looking to the liaisons to those particular committees. Okay, so could I have someone bring forward those minutes for information, please? Councillor Traynor, thank you. Seconder. Councillor Van Elfen, all in favor? Great. Thank you, Councillor Patton. Welcome back. Councillor reports. Councillor Barkwell.
Nothing to report, Madam Mayor.
Okay. Councillor Patton.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Nothing to report this week. Thank you so much.
Okay. Councillor Carlson.
I guess since we last met, I was put in a position of vice chair of the Okanagan Regional Library Board, and currently also been the interim chair of the Penticton Pinnacles
chair.
Football Club for the last 2 weeks, and I have a couple more weeks of that task, which is a whole different political world. So it's an interesting, and it's nice to be able to contribute some of these governance skills that I have been working on for the last few years.
Great, thank you. And congratulations again. Councillor Van Alphen.
Not a lot to report, Madam Mayor. Just congratulations to Councillor Carlson on her vice chair position at the library, and my deepest sympathies on the Pinnacle situation. But thank you for stepping up. You know, it takes a community to rally behind all these different organizations. And with that note, I just want to announce March 20th to the 24th will be the U18 Tier 4 hockey tournament here in downtown Summerland. So don't miss it. It'll be exciting. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Van Alphen. Councillor Holmes.
No report.
And Councillor Trainer.
Just quickly, on Saturday, we held our 16th Trout Creek Community Cleanup. And I think that people really needed to get out of their house because we had about 30 people come and volunteer to pick up garbage. So it was really, really awesome turnout. And we got a lot of garbage. We got about 40 big garbage bags, plus remnants of car crashes, tons of plastic, construction materials. So yeah, it was really, really good. And it's always fun. We get lots of people coming out and it's nice to see everyone. And I wanted to thank the district. They always pick up, we compile all the garbage and they pick it up on Monday for us. So thank you for doing that.
That's great. What a good community effort. Is there anybody waiting to talk to us? No. All right. So I will ask for adjournment of this meeting. Councillor Van Alphen, Councillor, anyone? It's just been so riveting. Councillor Barkwell, all in favor? Great, thank you. Good night, Councillor Patton.
Good night, everyone. See you later.